This program contains graphic violence. Viewer discretion is advised. Fame. It can transform a small-town dreamer into a superstar. Some people make it, and others die trying. Their dreams interrupted. One small-town girl from the Pacific Northwest just might have what it takes.
And the second she walked through the door, my heart stopped. I just knew that here was somebody who really had it.
She has to leave home to chase her dreams.
Portland wasn't really a place for a performer to launch a national career.
What attracts young, aspiring actors and actresses to Los Angeles? It's the glamour, it's the glitz.
But behind that glitz lurks danger.
When I got the call the next day, I was pretty much in denial. I didn't believe it.
An ambush by a madman.
There's a common theme with a lot of these people. They're troubled people. They have empty souls.
He wanted to be remembered, and he was willing to achieve it in any way that he could.
For aspiring stars like Rebecca Schaeffer, sometimes the pursuit of fame kills. In Hollywood, the only things brighter than the spotlights at a movie premiere are the stars in the eyes of the pretty young actresses hoping to be famous. Very few have what it takes to make it. One who does is 21-year-old Rebecca Schaeffer. She's a small-town girl from Oregon.
Rebecca was from the most amazing family. When you think about the ideal parents, that would be Benson and Dana. So loving, so wonderful, and this was their only child. She had a very normal childhood.
Rebecca Schaeffer had some special thing. Her smile was to die for. Her big brown eyes were absolutely glorious. But she had a spirit to her. She had a sweetness to her. She had these dimples. She just had this sweet girl next door vibe.
The girl next door, brimming with potential and big Hollywood plans.
Everybody wants fame. Everybody wants to be recognized, you know? That's just, it's a dream.
By 1989, she's inching closer to that improbable dream.
What they saw in Hollywood was that special energy about her, that effervescence that just jumped off the screen.
As an actress, she's ready to break out.
Something big was potentially about to happen. Francis Ford Coppola wanted to talk to her about a role in Godfather III. She's thinking, this could be my big break. Francis Ford Coppola, Godfather III.
She wasn't going to a casting director, she was actually meeting with Francis Ford Coppola himself. And she was very excited about that.
She's waiting for a courier to drop off a copy of the Godfather III script so she can prepare. She has no idea danger is lurking outside. At 10:15 a.m., maybe it's the courier with the script. But maybe it's not. One thing's for sure, after today, everything will be different. As a kid in Oregon, fame was not the first thing on Rebecca's mind.
There was an innocence about growing up in Oregon during that time. It was a safe place. We could ride our bikes. We could go from one house to another. We trusted our teachers. We trusted our parents. We trusted strangers.
She's the only daughter of a psychologist dad and a writer mom.
Rebecca really captured an innocence. I just think of her as being very classically beautiful and a very beautiful person inside and outside.
Believe it or not, Rebecca initially had plans to become a rabbi. A very noble profession, no doubt, but she was constantly told about her beauty. She heard it all the time. Who could deny it? So she decided at a very early age that she was going to see where she could take that.
She decides to get herself an agent.
I owned an agency in Portland, Oregon, and we had models as well as actors, but there are so few people that have it. And I've been asked to describe what it is, and it's not something you can describe. It's something that you just see when they walk into a room and they fill the room. Like Rebecca, you know, I mean, the second she walked through the door, my heart stopped. I just fell in love with her. She filled the room with her effervescence and her energy, and she was so adorable. I just knew that here was somebody who really had it. She started out as a teen model, and she was just so beautiful and fresh-faced. She did commercials around town.
I saw Rebecca on a couple of go-sees for print work. We were both primarily running into each other for catalog work, for statewide chain stores. She was humble, sweet, very well liked by everybody. She wasn't a show-off in any way. She was just very quiet, sincere.
The modeling is a stepping stone to her real dream, acting. She's cast as background on Quarterback Princess, a TV movie shooting in Portland, starring Helen Hunt, who exploded to fame on Mad About You.
It's just an extra role, and it wasn't much. It didn't pay hardly anything, but she was so excited to have that because you always think, this is my break. Somebody's gonna see me.
But fame can be very fickle, and nobody really sees her. If she wants to make it big, she'll have to leave Oregon.
When I think of Portland in the 80s, I think of it as being a little homespun. It wasn't really a place for a performer to launch a national career.
We had an opportunity to send her to New York to go to the Fame School. Rebecca's parents, Dan and Benson, Rebecca and I, we went out to dinner to discuss the potential for her to move to New York. I was nervous because she was young, she was 16, and New York's a big city, and Rebecca was a very trusting young lady who was just very open with people, and I worried about her.
But her parents know she can handle the challenge, and for Rebecca, it's a chance to follow the dream of a lifetime.
To move to a place like New York City would take very strong and supportive and loving parents. So I give her parents a lot of credit for letting their only child make that move.
In the Big Apple, she's awestruck. New
York City, from an Oregonian's perspective, is like a foreign country. It's big, it's booming, it's a 180 from where Rebecca and I were from. Rebecca had a lot of courage and a lot of drive, and I think Rebecca was very dedicated to what she wanted to do.
To stretch her cash, she moves into an apartment with other aspiring actresses.
6 roommates in a 2-bedroom apartment. You eat cheap, you live as cheaply as you can, you cut corners where you can, because nobody's got a lot of money. If you're not willing to make that sacrifice, and if you just expect it to happen overnight or that you deserve it, it ain't gonna happen.
Do you want to be on Broadway? Yes, actually, yeah.
Rebecca was a person who looked at life glass half full. So while there were struggles, I think she anticipated those struggles. I don't think she, for a minute, thought it was all gonna happen overnight, that this was a process.
She starts to book modeling gigs for magazines like 17.
She'd been in Portland magazines, but a coveted magazine like 17, that was pretty big. That was pretty big stuff there.
As a teenager, 17 magazine was everything, and that was our Vogue. It was amazing. I was so proud of Rebecca. Small town girl, makes it big.
She loves the thrill the early steps to fame can bring, but her modeling career hits a ceiling.
She was very tiny and wasn't tall enough or leggy enough to be a fashion model or a runway model.
But there was something about her, I go, she is so watchable, that this is somebody who could have a career in film and television. And I sat her down one day and I said, Rebecca, have you ever thought about acting? And her eyes lit up. And she says, I think I'd really like that.
While finishing high school, she begins taking classes and going on auditions.
Once you're bit by the acting bug, it's fatal. There's just no coming out of that. It's a dream that you're gonna chase.
She catches a piece of that dream when she lands a small role on the soap Guiding Light. Then, a longer-running spot on One Life to Live.
It's a big deal. Suddenly, she's in everybody's living room.
It was very unusual for her to start so quickly and to get as much as she did, because actors struggle sometimes for years before anything happens.
Early success does not guarantee constant work.
Rebecca was doing really good, but then things kind of dry up, and New York is a very expensive place to live. So even doing a little bit of work here and there doesn't really cover all the bills. And so things were getting very, very tight.
And when you're not doing so well, New York can become awfully frosty.
You don't have money, I don't have money, I haven't had any gigs recently. We're gonna get kicked out.
You have to remember the realities of everyone scrambling to get to the top. They'll kick you with their left foot and kick you with their right to get over the top of you. It can be brutal.
I'm sure there were times of loneliness. I'm sure that there were times of fear, the not knowing, and also feeling so far away from home.
It was probably the lowest point in her career.
Then she lands a big audition for a new sitcom starring Pam Dawber, who had just been in the hit series Mork and Mindy with Robin Williams.
She had this opportunity to audition for My Sister Sam, and she was practically broke then.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Schaeffer, and I'm going to be reading the part for Patty.
But even at her lowest point, Rebecca was still always a positive person.
Hey, Sam. Thanks for letting me come in.
Rebecca reads for the role,
We're gonna have a blast.
but then it's wait and wait. Will she get the gig?
There's lots of talent, and sometimes it just comes down to a look. Sometimes it's not even the right talent, but it's the right look. Is this the look that I want? There's just no really rhyme or reason to some things in the business at times. It's just the way it happens. And then there is being in the right place at the right time.
If she gets the part, it'll mean a very big break and another move, this time to LA.
You want to be rich and famous? Where do you go? Los Angeles. It's Hollywood. It's the Sunset Strip. It's the movie studios. It's the beaches. It's the weather. It's the glamour.
But that glamour comes with a price.
The dark side of fame is that when you're up there and everybody knows who you are, that takes away your privacy, and it makes you vulnerable to the unstable individuals who might become obsessed with you.
Oregon native Rebecca Schaeffer has dreams bigger than the Pacific Northwest and moves to New York seeking fame. Yet the big time comes with risks no one can predict.
Everyone thinks fame is so glorious. Fame makes life so easy. It really isn't that way. There's a lot of pressure that comes with fame. There's a lot of pressure that comes with everyone's microscope on your life.
But Rebecca's ready for it. She's gotten roles on several soaps.
I kind of called soap operas on-the-job training. It's a great place to get started. You work hard, long hours, you work fast, and you learn the business. And it can be a very lucrative business as well. You look at Susan Lucci, she's done very, very well. Meg Ryan started in soap operas. You know, a lot of people started in soaps.
Yet she's hoping for more than daytime TV. After an audition for the new sitcom My Sister Sam, she nervously awaits word. Though she's not sitting by the phone, she can't afford one. Then, the incredible news.
I got the part! I got the part! Oh my God, I got the part!
She actually had gotten the role. It was huge. It was so exciting.
My dream is gonna be so
Television superstar Pam Dawber, who just wrapped Mork and Mindy with Robin Williams, invites Rebecca to move in with her and her famous actor husband, Mark Harmon, in LA. Getting to stay with television royalty is a great start.
Mark Harmon and Pam Dauber were really, really good to her. She was going to be playing Pam Dauber's little sister, and they brought Rebecca into their home. And she lived with Pam and Mark. One of the things it would accomplish was cementing that relationship between Pam and Rebecca. They recognized that this was a very young girl who was not raised in Southern California, who was raised really in the Northwest and had a brief time in New York. And so they were very protective of her. They really took care of her.
As she gets to work, the Oregon girl experiences the real LA.
For people who make that trek from the small town to Hollywood, what the up-and-coming entertainment person finds out is that there's a lot of lying, that there's a lot of using, and that there's a lot of manipulation, and the disillusionment can be hard to handle.
And while she embraced her success, she never lost her Oregon roots. She still was able to maintain that beautiful innocence, and people related to that.
Her talent and attitude get her cast in films too, which is her ultimate dream.
She did the Woody Allen movie Radio Days and had an opportunity to really get her feet wet there. She did Class Struggles of Beverly Hills, where she played somebody totally out of character for her. She played Jacqueline Bissette's daughter, who was a spoiled little rich girl who didn't have any boundaries and was a total opposite of who Rebecca was.
It's a much more sophisticated role than the one on the sitcom. Rebecca's career is starting to mature. She even has a few sexy scenes in the picture. Eventually, she moves out of Pam Dauber and Mark Harmon's house and into her own place, an apartment in the quiet section of LA called Fairfax.
She felt it was time to get her own place, and they went apartment shopping with her to try to find a place that would be safe. And then they moved her into their first apartment. Mark built her a desk, and they just got her all set up and remained very close.
She hopes her next step toward major fame is a role in the final film of Francis Ford Coppola's Academy Award-winning blockbuster trilogy, Godfather III. A role in this film would put her career into the stratosphere. She would be working alongside legends like Al Pacino.
That would have been pivotal for her. That was going to be her big break to hit it to superstardom.
This was an absolutely stellar opportunity for young Rebecca Schaeffer to get seen by Francis Ford Coppola and have a role in the iconic franchise, The Godfather. Imagine the excitement she must have felt. She was waiting anxiously for that script to arrive.
At 10:15 a.m., a neighbor hears someone at the locked security door buzzing to a nearby apartment. Then, an interior door open and close, and footsteps heading toward the front.
The next thing she knows, the neighbor hears a major blast. It was so profound, it shakes the walls. Her cat jumps in the air, lands back on the floor. This neighbor is thinking, what in the world has just happened?
A screenwriter who lives across the street hears the commotion. He sees someone on the ground and a man in a yellow shirt running off. Neighbors call 911. Passers-by rush to help. Some recognize her. It's Rebecca Schaeffer. She's been shot in the chest. She's still alive and manages to say one word.
Why?
Ambulances arrive within minutes. Paramedics try desperately to resuscitate her. They put her in the ambulance. They bring her to Cedars-Sinai Hospital.
While doctors try to revive her, police get to work. At the front door, no sign of forced entry.
There was no evidence that anybody broke into the building.
While technicians start looking for prints outside, detectives check Rebecca's apartment. There's no sign of disarray.
There was no evidence of any kind of altercation. It was completely quiet.
Like someone hit the pause button in the young actress's life with no clues to indicate who. Detectives canvass the building.
It's a very quaint little village community. You've got lots and lots of people in the entertainment industry. Your next door neighbor could be a singer, the guy across the street could be a writer.
They learn about the neighbor who heard the buzzer, but she didn't see anything. Detectives speak to several people who were on the street that morning. They say a white male in a yellow shirt had been trying to confirm Rebecca lived in the neighborhood. He had a manila envelope with him.
Inside this envelope was an 8x10 photograph of Rebecca Schaeffer, and he was inquiring as to where she lived. He was asking neighbors, he was asking cab drivers. He was hell-bent on finding Rebecca Schaeffer's home.
No one can ID him. Across the street, police also talked to the screenwriter who saw a guy in a yellow shirt. He didn't get a good look at the man's face. Rebecca opened the door for him.
It's very sensible to assume that perhaps Rebecca knew the person when she opened the door.
Then, detectives learn a detail that complicates that theory.
She heard the buzzer in her apartment, but the intercom didn't work. So while she could hear the buzzer, she couldn't press the button and say, "Who is it?" If she hears the buzzer and she's waiting for a script, she's coming downstairs to open that door.
While actress Rebecca Schaeffer is not yet a household name, her career is on a steady ascent. From small-town modeling in Portland, to soaps in New York, to primetime TV and film in Hollywood.
I got the part.
One thing seemed to lead to another. The soap opera led to the TV show. The TV show led to opportunity in film. She was capturing it.
But then, on the day she's supposed to audition for Francis Ford Coppola for a role in his upcoming film Godfather III, she's gunned down in front of her apartment. LAPD forensics technicians find no physical evidence at the crime scene that might help identify the shooter. And unfortunately, the building has no security cameras to capture footage of the gunman or any car he might have driven. At Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, ER doctors do their best to revive her, but they pronounce Rebecca Schaeffer dead from a single shot to the chest. Crime scene techs found no ejected shell casings, so the gun was likely a revolver. The bullet that struck the young actress down was from a .357 handgun, a hollow point cartridge. Hollow points are designed to expand upon entering a body, to do more damage. Anyone using them has one goal: to kill instantly.
He knew what he was going to do. He was planning on obtaining his prey. And that was what his mission was, and he wasn't going to stop.
Homicide detectives have to make that most difficult call: notifying Rebecca's family. News of the actress's death spreads quickly.
An agent in New York called me to say, "Nanette, I'm so sorry." And I go, "What are you talking about?" And they go, "Rebecca's dead." And I go, "No, she's not." And they says, "No, Nanette, she's dead." And I said, "No, she's not." I was pretty much in denial. I didn't believe it.
And I remember receiving a phone call from Rebecca's best friend, who's also a very close friend of mine to this day. And I remember hearing it from her first and turning on the TV and just being in shock. It's almost an impossible moment to hear that somebody that you grew up with, somebody who was so beautiful and so kind and so innocent, that their life was taken that way.
Everything came to a dead stop. I was trying to get my head around it. because we didn't have any details then. We didn't know what happened, just that she had been murdered. I was devastated. She was like she was my baby. It was like taking a child from me. It was that devastating. And then I thought of her parents, and Den and Benson. It was never experienced anything like that.
Every news station in LA makes it the lead. Other outlets across the country quickly pick up on the horrible tale of a talented young rising star gunned down. Police hope the publicity will bring new leads. But they can't wait and continue their investigation. Early suspects in any murder are those in the victim's inner circle.
When you're dealing with a young woman, obviously the first thought is domestic violence or a boyfriend out to get you for whatever reason, or some sort of a fight that escalates into something more nefarious.
Police learn Rebecca had a boyfriend.
She had a relationship with a young man named Brad Silberling, who was an aspiring director. At the time, he didn't have any big success, but he went on to have great success with projects like Lemony Snicket and Casper.
They were an adorable couple. They were so cute together. I mean, she cared about him a lot.
He adored Rebecca Schaeffer. He worshiped her. He wanted to marry her.
But Rebecca wasn't so sure.
It all happened a little fast, a little too soon for her. She cared deeply for him. I just don't think she was ready to be married, and just wanted to kind of slow things down just a little bit.
The very first place the police look are loved ones. So obviously the first person they're going to look at is Brad Silberling.
Detectives need to find him and determine where he was that morning. They also ask insiders if Rebecca had any trouble with anyone in the business.
Agent person, and they're sitting here threatening me, telling me that if I didn't sign their contract, I wouldn't be allowed to work anymore. Is this true?
There was an occasion where she got very intimidated by one of the agents in Hollywood who kind of threatened her. If she didn't sign with them, they would kick her off the show. They would get her replaced. And she believed it. And I remember her calling me in tears. I was furious that somebody would take advantage of her that way, because she was the sweetest person there was.
But no one can imagine the agent killing her over it. Police find no record of domestic dispute calls at the apartment, and she's never reported any threats of harassment.
She was the nicest person on the planet. There wasn't any kind of neighbor that she was feuding with. Here's all police had to go on. A man between 5'7" and 6 feet tall, brown hair, a long sleeve yellow shirt, denim jeans.
He was asking passersby about Rebecca. Then he walked up and shot her.
The fact that he was in neighborhoods showing photographs, trying to determine where she lived, speaks to how obsessed he was, how pathologically obsessed he was with Rebecca Schaeffer. And the amount of energy that would take suggests just how consumed he was. It occupied every cell of his being.
A madman, determined to kill, face to face.
Rebecca Schaeffer was shot right in the chest at close range. That suggests a ton of anger and rage that he would be willing to do such a violent crime up so close and personal.
Most murdered women are killed by their spouse or lover, so detectives track down and question Rebecca's boyfriend.
When police interviewed Brad Silberling, what they got from him was an absolute sincere love and affection for Rebecca Schaeffer. He told them that he loved her, that he wanted to marry her.
He has a solid alibi. He is completely innocent and heartbroken at the loss of his love. It seems no one in her inner circle was involved.
The thing about Rebecca, she always maintained that girl next door, grounded sort of attitude, very loving, very friendly. You couldn't find a single person who disliked Rebecca Schaeffer.
Investigators have one theory left.
Her boyfriend was a loving guy with an alibi, no problem there. If I'm a crack detective and I know she has no enemies, and I find out from neighbors that there's a suspicious man walking in the early morning hours in this neighborhood carrying a manila envelope with an 8x10 of Rebecca Schaeffer, I'm pretty sure that I've got an obsessed fan on my hands.
Rebecca Schaeffer works hard to try to achieve her dream of being a Hollywood star. Just as she's on the verge of making it to the big time, a shadowy killer shoots her and vanishes without a trace. Investigators believe the shooter might be an obsessed fan. She had so many fans who wrote to her from all over.
She was right there on the brink to major stardom. I mean, she was very beloved by many people. She had a huge fan base.
She tried to write back, but it got overwhelming. And some of the letters were a little unsettling. Love letters, marriage proposals, sometimes vague threats. It means the list of suspects is huge. She also had fans trying to sneak onto set. One visited with gifts for her, telling security he knew her.
I'm an old friend of hers. Sorry, no idea. I can't let you in. You have to walk
Thankfully, Warner Brothers soundstage security turned him away.
There's a price to celebrity. I mean, there really is. There's pros and there's cons. There's goods and there's bads.
Rebecca tried not to let it scare her.
She wasn't a fearful person. She wasn't somebody who lived in fear.
But it can be scary.
The difference between a fan and a stalker is that the fan will simply be super interested in what the celebrity is doing, may want to be part of a fan club, ask for some photographs, and that's pretty much it. The crossover from fan to dangerously obsessed stalker is when they start to believe they actually have a relationship with the celebrity. They may come to believe that they have a special destiny with this person and that they're entitled to pursue and that they're driven to do so.
I've covered enough celebrity stalking cases to know that there's a common theme with a lot of these people. They're troubled people. They have empty souls, and they're looking somehow to latch on to something that gives them personal meaning. And who better to do that through but a celebrity whose name is in lights, and they can sort of vicariously live through that fame and fortune.
But who is he? And where?
He's going to have evidence of his obsession in his life space. And when stalkers have the videos and the photographs, it's so they can watch them, look at them, and fantasize. And it's part of their obsessive nature to retain these items and replay them over and over again as they imagine themselves connected and attached to the victim, and in worst case scenarios, put together situations in which they're doing harm to their victim.
LAPD detectives note an eerie resemblance to an attack on another actress, Teresa Saldana, just a few years earlier. After seeing Teresa in Raging Bull, a man named Arthur Jackson paid a private detective to get her mother's phone number for him. Jackson called her mother, posing as Martin Scorsese's assistant to get Teresa's address. Then showed up at her home with a 5.5-inch knife. He stabbed her 10 times, bending the blade with the force. Jackson was stopped, captured, and jailed. Incredibly, Teresa survived. Had Hollywood history repeated itself in a deadly way with Rebecca? Somehow, a madman with evil intentions walked up to a star in broad daylight, killed her, then utterly vanished. Investigators have no viable leads.
There were no warnings from anyone that anyone had been stalking her. They really were starting from ground zero with nothing.
Then, the morning after the murder, LAPD detectives get a call that starts to crack the case wide open. A woman in Tennessee says she's seen the news and thinks she knows who the gunman is.
I think it's my brother, Robert Bardo.
She says Bardo is 19 years old and lives in Tucson, Arizona. She explains Bardo called her the morning of the shooting.
And he said to her, guess what? I'm a block and a half from Rebecca Schaeffer's home. Now, she also tells police that who was obsessed with Rebecca Schaeffer and had been so for a couple of years.
He has a vast collection of videotapes and photos, all of Rebecca. He's written her dozens of letters over the years. Rebecca answered the first letter, but not the others. LAPD investigators called their counterparts 500 miles to the east in Arizona. But before Tucson PD can find Bardo, he finds them.
Dispatch is getting floods of calls from people. There's a crazy guy running in and out of traffic on a major freeway in Tucson, Arizona. It was puzzling. It almost seemed like this particular person wanted to die.
I was driving into work and overheard on my police radio that there was a person that they thought might be a mental patient or somebody on drugs who was running around in freeway traffic. And I realized that the location that they were giving was about 15 or 20 seconds away from where I was. And sure enough, I looked up there and I saw him just going over the edge of the freeway down toward one of the exit ramps. I got out and just called to him and said, hey, I told him who I was and waved my badge at him. He stopped. He didn't try to run away. So I said, I just want to make sure you're okay. And he was pretty much incoherent at that point. He was not making very much sense.
Then the man says something odd.
He was making references about the fact that he knew that he had done wrong and that he didn't mean for it to be that way. He didn't mean to hurt anybody. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I didn't go there to shoot her.
I didn't go there to shoot her.
Could this be the man who gunned down the actress? After the ambush murder of actress Rebecca Schaeffer, Los Angeles detectives get a tip Tucson resident Robert Bardo might be the shooter.
I think it's my brother, Robert Bardo.
Tucson Police Chief Peter Ronstadt responds to a call about a man acting strange by a highway.
I didn't go there to shoot her.
Ronstadt wonders if this is Robert Bardo and if he's referring to Rebecca Schaeffer.
And that rang the bell because that's what they were talking about on the news.
There were some shocking observations by Bardo's neighbors of him running into a wall head first and swinging from the eaves into windows. This reflects his self-destructive nature. It suggests problems with his impulse control and his propensity for violence because he lacks regard even for his own well-being and safety.
He had some issues with mental health. He was committed for mental health treatment for a period of time.
Tucson police take him into custody and confirm it's Robert Bardo. Searching his bedroom, they find photos, videos, and letters all about Rebecca Schaeffer. Robert Bardo is extradited to California. He never confesses outright and pleads not guilty when charged with murder. Slowly, investigators piece together an obsession that built to dangerous levels over time.
He wrote a flurry of fan letters to Rebecca. He showed up on the studio lot for the taping of My Sister Sam and tried to get on the lot.
Need to see ID?
No, I'm here to see Rebecca.
There was nothing that led anybody to believe that he was going to be any kind of a physical threat. Slightly obsessive, yes, but nothing that made them say, oh my goodness, we need to alert police.
Turns out, Rebecca responded to one of Bardo's early letters.
She just was very kind and caring. And so I did worry about that she might be a little too trusting at times, and people can take advantage of that.
When he sent more and more, she decided not to write back again.
The type of personality that commits this kind of murder is one that has narcissism as its foundation. Somebody that believes that they have been offended, has a thin skin, a brittle ego.
Investigators learned Bardo told a friend how angry he got when he saw her sexy turn in scenes from the class struggle in Beverly Hills.
In Bardo's mind, in his narcissistic mind, he's got this idealized, grandiose relationship that he's fantasized that he's having with Rebecca Schaeffer. And when she shifted into a different presentation of her acting self from wholesome to something a bit more risque, he couldn't tolerate it. He was outraged, enraged, and he was going to destroy her for that.
Detectives learned Bardo used a private detective to get Rebecca's address.
Robert John Bardo paid a private investigator $250 to get information from the Department of Motor Vehicles. It was that simple. So he says, hey, this is an old friend of mine I know around the studios. Can you help me find Rebecca Schaeffer's address? I want to get in touch with her.
He then hopped on a bus to Los Angeles with his gun, Rebecca's photo, and a copy of The Catcher in the Rye.
Catcher in the Rye was the same book found in the hands of killer Mark David Chapman just after he murdered the great Beatle John Lennon.
The lead prosecutor is Marcia Clark, who later gained fame as the lead in the O.J. Simpson case.
Do you know this girl? Do you know where she lives?
At trial, Clark argues that Bardo walked from the bus stop to Rebecca's neighborhood, then spent several hours wandering around, trying to confirm her address.
So Bardo went to a lot of trouble to prepare for his ultimate plan of taking her life. Stalkers who are most dangerous have this degree of investment of energy for their pursuit. And when a person puts their mind to it like this, they are incredibly dangerous.
Finally, he approached her building.
She hears the buzzer, but the intercom is not working, so she has to come and actually answer the door. But she was expecting the script for Godfather III delivered via courier.
Hi.
Rebecca?
Yes.
He's a fan. He wants an autograph. He wants to talk. She's a kind person. She doesn't necessarily rebuff him. She talks to him for a while, but then asks him to leave. Remember, the times were slightly different then. In this day and age, I would think that most people would immediately pick up their smartphones and call someone. Hey, there's a guy running around the neighborhood with a picture of a well-known actress. In 1989, I don't think that would necessarily have been an alarm.
He went to a restaurant and got something to eat.
This reflects just how detached he is about what he's about to do. A normal person would be too anxious to have an appetite before something like this. Eating before a horrific event like this speaks to how comfortable he was with what he was about to do.
Never in her wildest dreams does she imagine this guy is going to make a return to her home. The buzzer buzzes again. This time she's saying, it certainly this time must be my script for Godfather III.
But Robert Bardo had made a decision. Investigators search nearby rooftops and eventually find the bloodied yellow shirt, an empty gun holster, and the copy of The Catcher in the Rye. He must have discarded them as he fled. The murder weapon is never found. He jumped on a bus back to Tucson and was out of LA within hours of the killing.
Robert Bardo did not have a jury. He waived his right to a jury. It's a very unusual tactic, but he did it. What happened was he was sentenced to life without parole.
It was so painful to see Rebecca's parents in the courtroom and to know that they were there because of their daughter and their loss and how tragic that must have been for them.
As a result of this case, a new federal law was passed that prohibits state DMVs from disclosing home addresses. And California passed its first anti-stalking laws to help protect celebrities and ordinary citizens alike.
So it was a turning point and a sad one in a way that her death had to be the single pivotal moment to change the law. But I'm glad that it did something in a positive way.
Rebecca's boyfriend at the time, Brad Silberling, goes on to direct many feature films, including one very personal film.
He took Rebecca's death very hard. It was very difficult for him. One of the things he did was he wrote a movie called Moonlight Mile, and it was kind of his catharsis. It was about a family whose daughter is murdered. It was a really lovely, lovely movie. And I think that was his way of kind of dealing with what his feelings were.
I was always struck at how crazy Bardo was. He had a look in his eye, and that it was sickening to me, like he almost had a pride that he took her life. I hate the fact that he gets any sort of notoriety because of my friend.
Bardo wrote in his diary how important fame was to him. He wanted to be remembered, he wanted to be recognized, and he was willing to achieve it in any way that he could. And ultimately, he knew that if he took her life, he would forever be remembered as the assassin who killed Rebecca Schaeffer. This is what I call fame without achievement. It's a cheater's way to be remembered, and it speaks to his narcissistic yearnings, his narcissistic needs.
I don't know if justice has really been served because Rebecca's not here. My friend is gone. It's not fair.
She's been a big movie star. She would have reached superstardom. I could go down and I could walk on her star on Hollywood Walk of Fame. It would be there. She was just destined for stardom, just not this way.
She was so innocent. She wasn't jaded. There are a lot of not so nice people in Hollywood. She was a lovely person. She did not deserve to die. She had so much ahead of her.